So what I want to talk about today is that thoughts are causative. And that's sort of a clinical, scientific-y sounding way of saying it. Thoughts are causative. And what that means is that your new thought equals a new life. Whatever the experience that you've been having of life up until now is subject to change. Because by introducing a new thought, actually a new belief, and we'll get into the details about that in a little bit, by asking yourself, what if things didn't continue along the way that they had been going up until now? What if something new were possible? And when we engage in that what if, it opens up a whole world of scenarios, of possibilities for us, of things that can change. I remember several thousand years ago, it seems, when spreadsheets were first created. Before spreadsheets, basically, you had to go into a ledger and do all the arithmetic manually to try and change stuff. And spreadsheets let us say, well, here's what we're projecting for this month and for that month and for the other month, and you can put in formulas to say it's going to grow by 2%. And then you just change that number from 2% to 3%, and all the other numbers go and change. It's wonderful for playing the what-if game, and you get to try different models. And so what if it's 5%? What if it's 15%? And you get to go and see how many billions of dollars it's going to add to the end of the process or whatever. And it's a very powerful tool for showing you what the real-world impact is going to be of certain changes that are happening. And then you get into the thing where, well, okay, I put it into 50%, and that's a really rosy story. And you can say, well, that's the one I'm choosing. I want to have the 50% monthly growth. But then we unfortunately run up against what we call our belief, which is that we believe that maybe 2 or 3% is going to be possible, and 50% is completely unreasonable. And that might be a limitation in our belief system, or it could be a limitation in other stuff that's in the world around us. Along about the same period of time, I think it was the early 90s, I was working for a direct response marketing company. And we would send out a catalog the first of the year. It's a 1.2 million people. And they would order stuff from the catalog. And that was how life worked. And direct response marketing is the sort of thing where you send out the advertising material, and the next thing that happens is somebody buys something. There is no sales pipeline. It's not multiple steps. It's like the phone rings, and in those days stuff showed up in the mail. It was before we were getting emails and you couldn't order online on the web. Things would just happen. And I think it was the second full season that I was there. We did a really smashingly good catalog and mailed it out right around the holidays. And in January, the orders were coming in, and we were selling much more than we had anticipated. We had anticipated some healthy growth, but we were going beyond that. And so I was in a meeting with the vice president of marketing. I said, well, this is great. He says, no, I'm in trouble. I said, what do you mean? He says, we don't have enough people to answer the phones. We don't have enough people to process the orders, and we're going to run out of inventory if this keeps going on. He says, I need to not just say we're going to grow wonderfully. I need to, and coming in low is really bad, but coming in high is almost as bad, because then there's customer satisfaction issues as people can't get through on the phone, they can't get their stuff delivered in time. So when you're playing that what if, it's what do I believe, what is possible, and if it's more successful than I thought it was going to be, what are the ramifications of that? What does that mean? What does that change in my life? Now, in a lot of cases, it's okay. And in the world of prayer, we're talking about health, wealth, love, work, and spirit. So let's do love. And we set the intention that what we want to do is have a wonderful, joyous, committed, loving relationship. And I have bunches of prayer work stories about people who have created just exactly that experience in their life. I'm doing another one of their weddings in October. And it's a wonderful process. It's a wonderful activity to be engaged in. But what if you wind up with 4 loving, wonderful relationships that you want to be committed to? Then it turns into a completely different situation. Is that good? It's better than not having anybody, but maybe it's not as comfortable as just having the one show up. So what we got to do is be aware of what our experience has been up until now, and then when we do the what if, consider, what's the experience I really want to be having? what is the experience after this prayer, after this new experience has come about? What does that look like for me? Because having not enough is unpleasant, and having too much is equally unpleasant. And as we're looking at our life, if we're seeing problems or challenges or difficulties or circumstances or situations, we can look at those and say, based on what has happened up until now, this is what I want to have happen instead. And we get to pivot. Instead of looking at the problem or the scenario that has led up until now, we can use that to inform us, to guide us, to suggest, what do I want to be experiencing instead? And we can turn from whatever that darkness has been to the light and invite in a next new experience for doing that. And we like to say, your new life begins with a new thought. And that's kind of true, but there's more to it than that. You've probably heard, it's done unto you as you believe. And that is absolutely the truth. As you believe, so it is done. And that's not, it is done unto you as you think. It's not, it is done unto you as you want. And that's because we are creating our life according to our beliefs. And we want to change something in our life, we have to change our belief. And that's beyond just the thought. Now, if we're going to do an affirmation, I can do that with the thought. I have a perfect loving relationship. I have plenty of money to spend, to share, and to save. I have wonderful, uplifting, creative work that supports me and brings richness and joy into my life. Those are all wonderful affirmations that we can do, and those are based on our thoughts. And if I say, I am prosperous, 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 often enough, I will have the tendency towards being prosperous. Except if I have a belief that I live in lack, if I am got some idea that I can't make a suitable living because of the career that I want to be in. I want to be a teacher, I want to be a minister, I want to be a musician, I want to be an artist, and that doesn't pay well. If I have the belief that whatever it is that I want to do with my time isn't going to support me financially, then the experience that I will have, regardless of how often I say I am prosperous, is that I'll have an experience of struggle or lack or not quite enoughness. Which is why we do it as a prayer rather than an affirmation. And in practical prayer, what we're doing is we are going into a bigger picture. So we're able to look at the life experience that we've been having. We can identify, same way, this is the experience I want to be having instead. But then we turn our awareness to the fact that this might be a belief that we have that's hidden somewhere in our subconscious. And you know how you can tell when a belief is in your subconscious? Yeah, you're not aware of it. That's why sub is right below there. If it's a conscious thought, then you have access to it. If it's a subconscious thought, then it's hidden. And that might be a belief that's been hidden because of something that you learned as a kid. It could be just something that got ingrained somehow. It could be acting out the same pattern that's been happening in the family for years or generations. Fortunately, there are ways to figure out, and we don't even need to figure it out. There are ways to understand what is in our subconscious and then uproot that and deal with it. Do you know how you can tell there are weed spores in a garden? You tend the garden and you plant the seeds that you want, and then when weeds show up, that's a pretty good evidence that there were weed spores in the soil there. And you've been watering and tending and fertilizing and so forth, and up come the weeds. Well, that's a great way of discovering that there were weed spores in there. You watch what's coming up in the crop and you say, okay, let me pull the weeds out and plant the seeds that I want and have those instead. And the same thing works with our subconscious, because the experiences, the beliefs that we have in our subconscious are sprouting. I think I mentioned at the very beginning that thoughts are causative. And those beliefs that are way down belief are causative as well. Those are causing things to show up in the experience that we have in our life. So you can look at the weeds that are coming up and say, oh, this is a problem, how difficult, how awful, terrible, I'm being punished, this is no good for me. Or I can kick myself for what's in my subconscious. Oh, I can't believe that I believe that. That's so awful. Bad practitioner, bad human. I can, but I don't have to. I can use that input, that evidence, that guidance about what's in my subconscious to create something new. And it's always a wonderful question to say, what is in my subconscious? What is in my subconscious? What is it that could be creating this? And I've had the opportunity to do prayer work as a practitioner with clients who have beliefs that are left over from decades earlier in their life. And they learn things from their family of origin that just seemed completely reasonable at the time, and it's been reenacting itself continuously ever since. And by bringing that up into the light, understanding that's what it is, we can set a new intention. Okay, I learned this. I thought this was the way the world works. So instead of me not being able to succeed at what it is that I want to be doing, what I'm doing is I'm succeeding perfectly at old bad instructions. I'm running a bad program perfectly. So what we want to do is, instead of continuing to work on how well we're doing it, we want to change the program. We want to change the program. You know, we're talking about like the old days of technology. Pop out the disk and pop in a new one, and run a different program there. And by the way, the question, what's in your consciousness or what's in your subconscious, is a good question for you to ask yourself, but it's not a question that you can ask of somebody else. That's their own business, what's in their subconscious. It's an offensive question. What's in your consciousness? It's like, we'll see what kind of weeds show up in my garden, and perhaps the person who asked that question is one of them. So don't ask that question. So we have this technique, and it's a really powerful technique. It's called practical prayer. And you guys have heard about practical prayer for real results, or spiritual mind treatment, which is what Ernest Holmes called it. And in the middle of a practical prayer is an affirmation, is I am prosperous, or I have my perfect loving relationship, or I have wonderful uplifting work that supports me fabulously. And that's just the middle of it. Because when we say that ourselves, as I mentioned, that's we're trying to change our thoughts, but we're not going into consciousness. What we want to do when we're making that into a prayer is we back up a little bit. And instead of starting with what it is that I want to create in my life, I start out by identifying who I am. And the first thing that I want to do is identify that infinite creative power that creates everything. There's spirit, God, nature, the Big Bang, whatever it is that we're calling it. It's the source from which everything is flowing. All of our creation stories are exactly the same, regardless of whether we're talking about scripture or science, the Big Bang. There's a singularity. There is one that begins sharing itself as its creation. And everything comes from that one. That includes me, that includes you, that includes the great situation that you're inviting, and it also includes the crappy situation that you're ready to move beyond. It's all part of that one. And that one is rearranging itself, reparticularizing itself, realigning itself in different ways all the time. I mean, there are billions of stars in the galaxy, billions of galaxies in the night sky. And there's so much richness, there's so much variety and diversity available, that the infinite can rearrange itself in different ways all the time. There's not a limitation to what that infinite creative power can do. And since everything is created by that one, that means so am I. So is each of us. We are each expressions of the one. So when I say I am prosperous, or I have my perfect loving relationship, or I have wonderful uplifting creative work that supports me fully, it's not just me. That is that infinite creative power that creates everything. It's creating that right now, as and for and through me right now. This is a therapeutic technique, because we can take the experience that has been, choose something different, align ourselves with that infinite creative power, and invite in something new and wonderful. The last two steps are gratitude and release. We are grateful for the good that's unfolding, and we speak that word, and we release our intention to the same creative law that creates everything. Practical prayer, spiritual mind treatment, is also diagnostic, because what happens is we anchor our little wheelbarrow or our little cart onto that infinite creative power, say that's the truth of who and what I am, and we say that prayer, I have my perfect loving relationship, or the job, or the health, or whatever it is, and that little voice says, yeah, but still lonely on Saturday night. Yeah, but haven't been able to pay that Zelle yet for the pet sitter. Or, yeah, but I've been a starving artist for a long time. And sometimes that can be discouraging, to state this new experience that we're going to be inviting into life, and hear that little voice in the back of our head saying, it's not going to happen. But that's diagnostic, because what that's doing is it's telling you what's in your belief system. It is done unto you as you believe. And that little voice is telling you what you believe. So if it says, yeah, but you're a starving artist, then you can meet that where it's coming from. It's like the thought that I need to be starving, that I need to be impoverished in order to share my gifts with the world is complete nonsense. I can bring to mind all sorts of artists, all sorts of creators who are doing exactly the same sort of thing that I want to do and are being richly and lavishly supported in it, who are very successful in it. If it can happen for them, if it can happen anywhere, it can happen for me. And uproot those weeds from our belief system. Then we do the affirmation again. I have wonderfully rich and creative work sharing my gifts with the world, and I'm generously supported. And one of two things is going to happen. Either there's another yeah, but, in which case you get to go through the cycle again. No, that's not true. Not true. The limitation is not true. And then affirm it one more time. Or come to the understanding that there's something that is deeper here than we thought originally. And then we get to change the prayer. And one of the really cool things that you get to do, if there's something going on in your consciousness, in your subconscious, that you're not able to get past the belief, that is where a practitioner comes in. Practitioners are rental consciousnesses. They can, it's done as you believe, and I don't have to believe it for myself. I can believe it for somebody else. And as long as they're willing to get out of the way, they're willing to pull their disbelief back and allow my belief to be operative or causative, then that new experience comes about. And when you're getting somebody to do a miracle in a minute prayer with you, then it's a short kind of a thing, and it's just going to be the prayer. But when you do a session with a practitioner, with a professional practitioner, one of our practitioner interns, what will happen is you'll spend 45 minutes to an hour talking about the experience that you've been having, talking about the experience that you want to be having, and also talking about where those hidden beliefs that have kept the difference between what you want and what you've had from coming into experience. And at the end of it, there's going to be a prayer. And you don't have to do the prayer. They do the prayer. They speak the words. They know the truth in their mind. And we take advantage of the fact that, remember I mentioned that your subconscious is where you're not aware of what you're conscious of? There's only one subconscious. That is the subconscious that we all share. So when that belief gets implanted into the subconscious, that universal subconscious by the practitioner, it's the same as if you thought it up yourself. And as the client, all you have to do is stay out of the way. And then watch what grows in your garden. Absolutely spectacular, amazing, wonderful process. So, with 4 brand new practitioner interns available to work with you, we will put their contact information into the chat, or like I said, you can go to the newthoughtphilly.org website and go to the prayer request form, and one of them will get back to you. And create something new and wonderful in your life. Do it for 2 reasons. First of all, to give our practitioners some success in having this process work, and to prove that their education paid off. Oh, and by the way, to have a new and spectacular experience in your life. There's that too. Because you deserve it. You are wonderful. And so it is.